I'm having a hard time believing that a person that did as much as Prince did to protect his music and the integrity of his concepts and the integrity of his music, that he didn't have something somewhere indicating what his wishes would be if something were to happen to him while he was living. I can't see a person like him not doing something to take a precaution to let people know what he would wish to happen with what he had accumulated in terms of his archive and body of work over the course of his life. But I also know that he was faced with the issues that many people who have achieved great things have been faced with, and many people with great wealth have been faced with. A lot of people have reached a point where they have written their loved ones and the people close to them out of their lives and out of their wills after their death. Because a lot more people in the last few years have been exploited to obtain access to people's possessions and their assets than we've seen in a long time. There are people that are willing to rob, steal, kill, or do just about anything to have access to something they believe they can get something from at the expense of a successful person. And so if that means they get a photo op, if that means they get an autograph, if that means they get anything that they can take and spin it into some type of relationship that can give them gain and benefit, they will. And so some people have actually been afraid to sign wills because you're almost giving people an incentive to make an attack on your life in order to give free rein to those they know will inherit what you have essentially signed off in your will. The protective mechanisms for keeping control and making sure that you can secure your personal assets has become increasingly difficult. Because when the idea of privacy becomes invaded and you don't have anybody defending your copyright in the U.S. Patent Office and the trademark system is in limbo because they don't have enough time to manage the cases. They don't have enough people who even understand the process enough to begin at even an entry level of how to defend people's intellectual property and the things that are their material and economic assets. It becomes increasingly difficult. I'm still personally shocked and I'm personally stunned, and I have not made any public comments yet about Prince because I am deeply affected. I am a completely straight man, but I really, really loved that man. I really, really loved that artist because he did something for all of us that was natural. I don't believe we will ever find another artist who can do what he did in total for music. This guy was able to push us beyond anything that we had even considered. This guy was able to make a guitar cry like a baby or sing like a lullaby. This guy had a voice that he could take to so many levels and so many creative dimensions that gave him his own unique identity that he didn't even have to come up with some type of hook or some type of secondary beat to be creative. Just hearing him speak could affect you because some people are naturally the truth. And to think that he was so small in stature and to think that he had these insecurities that he would openly discuss sometime would be just shocking when you see him step on a stage in his element and how he could affect so many people at one time, not only for the set that he was performing, but forever. When it was announced that he passed, a lot of things went through my mind. I thought about Whitney Houston. I thought about Michael Jackson. I thought about James Brown. I thought about many icons that we've lost. David Bowie and many other people who we have lost so quickly and so suddenly. I thought about all the other icons who have made an impact that affected us through culture. Prince was one of those people that came along that gave us permission to be our real selves. He was one of those people that came along that gave us permission and insight to try things that we have never tried and go as far as we wanted to go tastefully. And some of the stuff that he did even bordered on what some considered immorality because it seemed so nasty and so honest and so free. But he was telling the truth about what we do and what we live. And he would put such a creative edge on it that even when it was wrong, everybody said, but for you, Prince, this is okay. Nobody would ever be able to keep up with him because there was something about him that was natural human innovation. He was already thinking about where the end means could be by instinct and nature. He didn't have to have anybody tell him to predict or do anything like that. Some people are very special. I believe that some people are brought here a little bit more close to God than other people, and I believe he was one of those people. He, amongst the others that I've mentioned and many other great artists over the course of history, have come in and been able to do something for music that so many figures in the industry have utilized to be able to expand and expound upon their own careers. Some people had a pure ability to come up with something that we've never heard and that we've never considered, and something that just rocks the foundation of who we are. Prince was a guy that could do something that everybody's completely against and then convince them creatively that maybe they should consider it because they might like it. And when you're talking about creative people and what art is supposed to be, and the fact that it's supposed to make people think about things that maybe they have not yet considered, think about things beyond their expectation, to consider the unknown element and the possibilities that something is in this universe that can give us a vision and it is totally unseen and we are totally unaware of it. Prince was able to do that. He was magnetic, he was good looking, he was stylish, and he showed us what expression really means. He wasn't trying to be this person or that person. He was trying to be Prince. And he told everybody from the very start, this is who I am. And you're going to like this. And you've never seen anything like this. And you've never experienced anything like this. But you're going to like it. And this guy could take people that would otherwise be against someone like him and make them say, you know what? I need to consider this. Even if I don't like it, I've never seen anything like this. I've got to see this. And he turned his career into something that made all of us know him and be a part of him and feel him in his passing. I felt very devastated personally as a person who's a music lover, a music supporter, and who's been around just about every element of the entertainment game that you can be in without actually being in it. And I was personally affected because when you see enough people who are in the entertainment business, you know who the ones are that have that something that nobody can create or train except God himself, the creator herself. And Prince was all of that. He was biracial. And he challenged everything we thought about what it means to be human. He was all of it in one person. This guy could make you love. This guy could make you excited. This guy could make you fantasize. This guy could show you how to do what you didn't even know how to do. This guy could get to the core of human instinct and show you how to be your unaltered, unaffected, private self with a lover like nobody else in the industry. And there are some super gifted, talented people over the course of music history, but there will only be one Prince. When he died, the first thing that happens when people have amassed an estate of someone wealthy is that they have to decide who gets access to his possessions. You've got friends, you've got relatives, you've got associations professionally, you've got associations non-professionally, you've got your wife, you've got your lovers, you've got all of these people who come into the equation. You've got the people that are going to come in and say they knew you in some kind of way personally who maybe didn't. You've got your industry insiders who want something that they can get that would be exclusive, that they can still sell because they know that your spirit lives on even if you're no longer here. You've got all of this stuff going on, and it becomes difficult to know what you intended to happen with the part that means something in your body of work if you have nothing documented or nobody can find what you had documented. Sometimes you have predatory lenders, sometimes you have predatory record labels, sometimes you have predatory lawyers, sometimes you have predatory people who were anti-First Amendment against the arts and politics. You have all of these hurdles and all of these obstacles that challenge the probate and estate system on what happens to people when they die. What happens to people who are successful and who have achieved something or who have something that is sellable to the marketplace economically when they die? A lot of things can happen to people when they die because they don't have anybody to answer to when the person is no longer around. As a matter of fact, being an artist myself and being a creative, as well as a business person myself, I know very well what it means when people see more value in you dead than they do alive because they don't have to answer to anybody if you're not around. And so people had to come up with mechanisms on how people can protect and defend themselves in their work from people who exploit people in that way. Some people exploit people because of age. Some people exploit people because of sickness. Some people exploit people because of death. Some people exploit people because of injury. Some people exploit people because of things like mental illness and all kinds of stuff. You have to have some type of person that is your regulator. You got to have some kind of person that is your guardianship or what have you, because sometimes it is determined that a person is incapable under certain circumstances of being able to protect themselves in the amount that they have to lose if something happens to them. And if they don't have adequate security, or if they don't have some kind of way to defend it, they've got to have an executor or somebody that they can transfer the rights to, the power of attorney or something to protect their work. And it opened up the window to numerous cases throughout society and throughout the industry itself about what's supposed to happen with people's materials after they die. Now, I'm going to expound on that a little bit more, but I want to tell you about my personal situation because I have a very predatory family. And it's not something that I chose or want to disclose. It's something that I discovered because the last person on earth that would not want to share with the people that I love or that are my kin would be me. But I realized they didn't care about my personal welfare. They didn't care about my creativity. They didn't see any value in it because my family comes from a very, very low education. They have not really invested in anything meaningful to society. They are not productive citizens. They have not done anything for politics. They have not really done anything that is meaningful for anybody, even their own. And they have always kind of waited for people to die so that they could be the first in line to show up and say, hey, where's his stuff? I'm going to get that for him because, well, I'm his sister, I'm his brother, I'm his cousin, I'm his this, or I'm his that. And when you go to most of the ones that are older in my family, they have a lot of things that they have accumulated from the dead. And my kinds of people are the people that would rather keep something that belongs to somebody else and get nothing from it than to put what that person had somewhere where it can be of use and value. I've had pictures stolen. I've had my artwork stolen. I've had my video material stolen. I've had my sculptures stolen, my clothes, my personal writings, my newspaper clippings and books and things that I have for my research, my bags, personal things that were unique to me taken. And I remember there would be times I would come back and I know where I put the things that I have. And it would be missing or it would be moved. And I'm like, okay, well, what's going on? Well, sometimes they would steal my stuff. And it was not just my relatives. A lot of people were trying to do stuff. They would steal it, copy from it, and then put it back so it would look like nobody ever did anything. They would steal the key, go into somewhere they were not supposed to be, and put the key back. And when you're talking about how some of this is possible, when you're looking at other families, people can be drugged, people can be injured, people can be medicinally sedated. It can be all kinds of issues that put people into an altered state of mind that make them vulnerable to be taken advantage of. Because when you lose your estate, you're losing a lot of things. You're losing your gender, you're losing your sexuality, you're losing everything, because people can start saying just about anything about you when you're dead. If they find something that they can cause a scandal about, they will. There was a picture that somebody took, for example, in high school. And one of my teammates ran up behind me when I was eating this hamburger, just fooling around, goofing off. And somebody happened to snap the picture right there. And if you look into the picture frame, it looks like this guy was my lover standing behind me, hugging me intimately. And absolutely nothing like that was going on. It just looked like that because somebody wanted to make it appear that way through the lens. Now, in my absence, without being able to explain what took place in that picture, if something were to happen, for example, where I couldn't represent myself, somebody can take a picture like that and scandalize it. And when you're talking about the mass dissemination of modern technology, you can take a person's truth and make the whole life that that person lived become a lie. And so I saw Prince in a very vulnerable position. After he died, people started to emerge. I'm his son, or I'm his daughter, I'm his brother, I'm his sister, or whatever the relationship would have been. And then you have to start giving credence to, okay, now who's credible, who's legitimate, what does the state law say about how we're supposed to disperse his assets in his wake? What is supposed to come as a result of his valuables and the things that defined his life and make him who he is? What system of disbursement do we have in place? And that's part of the reason why a lot of artists get attorneys. You get a lot of things signed into law as your protection, so that if something goes wrong, whether you're living or whether you're dead, you have some defense of what's yours. Somebody can show up and say, well, I didn't write that song. Prince wrote it, or vice versa. Prince didn't write that song, I wrote it. And you've got all of these issues that other people are going to be standing up representing you for, with no real determination about what the intent of the actual content owner and creator was. Okay, so say for example, Prince was in possession of something that was not his, but he designed it, he owned it, he paid for it, he produced it or whatever. It's his property by law. Except somebody else was the content creator, or vice versa. Somebody else has something that belongs to Prince, but they say that they own it and that it wasn't Prince's property. How do you determine who should get what, who owns what, when a person is no longer available to decipher the facts? The whole purpose of making a will, having an estate, and doing all of that stuff in the first place is to make sure that there's some documentation that will validate the intent of the original content creator, the owner of the intellectual property, and what their intentions and the purpose was for what they had in their possession. When somebody leaves us suddenly, when somebody leaves us at a time that was not anticipated, it creates even more tension, because you have to determine who is next in line to disperse this content to. You have children, you have siblings, you have parents, you have friends, you have industry people, you have record labels, you have all of this stuff that can come into play where people are saying, hey, that's mine, or I know something about it. Now, to put this into perspective, I'm going to use myself because I've had a creative background my whole life. And I had a chance to be in just about every part of the industry that you can be in without being in it directly. I've been to every kind of venue. I've been around every kind of artist, and I've seen just about every type of situation come up where somebody is either empowered or they're totally exploited. I mean, I've seen people be taken advantage of so badly that it's almost as if they're dead when they're living because they have been so entrapped by somebody's contract that they would never have an opportunity to act upon their will in the first place because they can't even make a single move until the person that they signed that contract with gives them permission. And sometimes that's an attorney too. I personally have no parents left and no grandparents left. I have a bunch of relatives, cousins, and aunts, uncle, and extended distant relatives. My siblings are the next people that would be in line for possession of something that I have. That would mean like my sisters or my brother or their children, my nephews, my nieces. And I've even been told that I have some step brothers and sisters whom I've never ever met, whom I've never interacted with, whom have never introduced themselves or anything, who could come into play in a situation like this. And I'm not in that situation per se, but if I were in Prince's position, I would have to consider all these things. I have never given my siblings, nor any of my relatives, nor anyone else in my personal relationships or my professional relationships any permission whatsoever to depict me for use in anything, publishing, videos, film, nothing. I retain the rights and ownership of my own person and my intellectual property and my creations. If somebody has something that validates that relationship is different, they will have a mutual signature on something that can prove and validate that was something that both of us concluded and was permitted. And I don't mean the things that have been fraudulently created, where forgery of some kind has taken place. As a matter of fact, in some of my style, I do what I do in a manner where it will be very difficult to commit acts of forgery in the first place. The thing that made Prince so unique and spectacular was that this guy had the ability to do something that was uniquely him. Prince could take us into the unseen levels and dimensions of what art is supposed to be. Prince could take us out of this universe. Prince had the ability to show us things that we would not be able to see on our own, to take us to the depths of emotion, to the depths of life and pleasure and entertainment and love that we can't see visible in front of us. This guy was so incredible that something about him made all of us know him, even the people that would otherwise be against him. My family has stolen quite a bit from me, and so has a lot of my friends. Well, I thought they were friends, my classmates, some people that I've dated, and what have you. As a matter of fact, one female that I dated, I took some artwork to her place because I was sorting out my possessions for some things that I had planned. Out of the blue, she jumps up and creates this sudden disruption and disturbance, and I grabbed my stuff and I left. My plan was to retain the rest of my property and obtain the rest of my property when I was able to without having to be in confrontation with her. Well, she stole my art. One of them included a big picture of a bonnet, of a woman and wearing a bonnet that was from my personal collection. And what she did was took that piece of work and several other things so that she could use it to try to build what she wanted her version of something to be. In the business of news, they're always going to try to make it seem like there are two sides to every story. Here's this person's side, and here's the other person's side. Well, if you have overwhelming evidence to substantiate exactly what you said, the only thing a news organization or a lawyer or a governing body or anybody can do is try to come up with a way to create a probable cause to justify a counter story to make people question the credibility of what you presented in the first place. And the only reason they will be interested in getting the second story in the first place, the other side of the story, the two sides of the story in the first place, is because there's something in between all of it that calls whatever they had done originally or their intentions into question. They're trying to create the element of doubt in the case law system.
What happens is they're trying to create a reasonable doubt. Anybody in the legal procedure, the judge, the district attorney, or any of the parties that are in the court that are trying to determine innocence or guilt, the jury, or what have you, they're doing that on the basis of whether or not someone has created a reasonable doubt for them to consider that those that have been accused may not be at fault. If you are dealing with an attorney, somebody that went to law school, whatever they're doing with you when they're dealing with you is going to be based upon the structure that they learn in the legal system. And they're going to try to always include, even in their personal life, some type of defense for whatever actions that they take, so that they will be able to counter anything that they're accountable for to come up with a reasonable doubt, to call anything that they may be at fault for into question. And what you have to do is use evidence to substantiate that there is no doubt, because there would be no reason to look for probable cause or reasonable doubt in the first place unless something is wrong. I make sure that I limit my contacts specifically. I have not hung in any of their groupings. I have not been invited, nor have I asked to be a part of their little cultures and cliques. I don't owe anybody in this town anything. I have not asked anybody for anything. And so they have no basis whatsoever for even claiming to have knowledge or contact with me unless somebody did something they were not supposed to be doing in the first place. And so the question is, what's really going on? I come from a community that does collective investments, where they exploit the public domain and the eminent domain to overwhelm people and take advantage of their lives. So they can come together as a group so that no one specific person will be accused or responsible for doing something that everybody invested in, because it would be too difficult to litigate against a group versus an individual or a small sector of people. But if anybody's trying to do anything with that, with something that they have obtained without permission, that they plan to gain from at the expense of somebody who did not give them that permission, they are at fault. And so they go into this collective character assassination intended to disparage you in such a way that they can come up with a way to manufacture the other side of that story. The other side of that story is going to come from the press. It's going to come from people they claim were witnesses, people that came into contact with you, people that they said knew you. But all of that can be overwhelmed by evidence, because people can come together collectively for a group lie. And if you can show that a collective of people have come together against somebody they don't really know in the ways they're claiming, to try to evade accountability for an absolute violation of somebody's person, their liberty, or their rights, clearly something's wrong. Now, if a person is deceased, if they had a nervous breakdown and went crazy, if they're mentally ill, if they're injured or sick or sedated, they have no way to defend themselves against the things that I just described. And so Prince got caught up into that type of vacuum by the way that he died and was found. They claim that something about whatever prescription medications he was taking was cause for his death, meaning that they're saying that he died, but nobody's really responsible for it but him, because he either misused it or he took too much of it or it was the wrong prescription or whatever, but he took it. Nobody killed him. Nobody murdered him, allegedly. But nobody really knows, because he was found alone, and he was found inside of an elevator. My relatives are people who will take advantage of their own kin. They have always exploited the dead. Before people can even go through a proceeding, go through a funeral or anything, they're usually there showing up to see what possessions they can get that belong to somebody, when there's nobody to have to be accountable to. Some of them will even take things that don't belong to them and say, hey, that was mine and that person had it. I was just getting it back. Or they'll say, he gave this to me. But what if they didn't give it to him? How do you know? And part of the whole basis for documenting things and getting lawyers to show your intention is to make sure that people cannot come in and do things like that. My siblings technically are only my half siblings. I'm the one that's from the true biological seed. I'm the firstborn. The rest of my siblings have different fathers and the same mother. And so they're actually my half siblings technically, biologically. But I love them like they are my 100% biological siblings. But they have no permission whatsoever to take ownership or possession or gain from anything that I have created, because they didn't help contribute to it. They don't know what it is, and they didn't support it. And some of them will even collect people's stuff and say, well, I gave it to your nephew, or I gave it to your niece so they would know who their uncle was, so that it will help them because I know that's what you wanted. So they can exploit you by taking something and then making it seem like somebody younger was the beneficiary. Nobody whatsoever at this stage in my life has permission to be a beneficiary of anything that I have or have done. That means not the state. That means not this community. That means no siblings or relatives. That means no friends. Nobody. And I took the steps and procedures to make sure that was known, because I have written a customized legal policy of my intention for my works. If people have not supported you, if they're not trying to help you be who you are, what right do they think they have in the first place to be trying to take ownership of anything? But in Columbus, Georgia, part of they can overwhelm your whole life and take your life and your liberty from you is to take your possessions, your earnings, and your freedom from you, which is actually also unconstitutional. But if you're dead or injured or sick or the things that I've described, how could you defend yourself? You cannot. Prince was a person that took us into another place in the universe. I don't think we will ever have another artist like that. This guy could take something that seems morally wrong and corrupted, something that's naughty and nasty and vain, and make you say, well, that's wrong and I usually don't like it, but for you, I'll consider this. Because he was that magnetic and spectacular. There was something about him that made all of us know him. Now, his siblings are in a dispute over his estate. And I don't know if it's anything that's aggressive where people are fighting about who should get what. But a lot of people who have died across the entertainment industry and the wealth sector have had these awful, awful disputes within their family about who gets what. Some girlfriend shows up, some ex-wife, some current wife, somebody that's just a parent of a child they have in common. All kinds of stuff come up where people are saying, well, wait a minute, we have a right to some of this too. And when the man is not there to defend himself, who takes care of that for him? Artists are supposed to be a bridge for the world. We're supposed to be a bridge for one another. Prince has passed and crossed that bridge to wherever we go when we leave this living life. And we're supposed to be an extension of the bridge that he paved the way to and was unable to finish. The bridge into the next generation. And we're supposed to assure that we do things to make sure that it is understood what his intention may have been and what art is really supposed to be for the world and culture that we live in. People don't realize how much art contributes to the economy, the politics, and the social fabric of the world in which we live. The entertainment industry creates the part of our lives that we want when we're not working. We work for what we want to be able to do when we're not working. And the creative class is who makes that possible. People spend more wealth on the things that help them be inspired, be entertained, be spiritually nourished, and what have you, whether it's from faith, pop rock, soft rock, R&B, or whatever genre, whether it's performance art, creative art, traditional art, dance, or what have you, music, all of it provides economic reinforcement for the world in which we live. But a lot of people are masquerading as artists who really aren't artists. Just because you're a person that knows how to create something, just because you have talent does not mean that you are an artist. An artist is supposed to take human thought, human evolution into a place that people have not yet considered, to get you to try something that maybe you haven't tried yet, to think about something that you haven't thought about yet, to make each generation unique into itself so that creatively every generation defines what they stood for and what it was all about when they lived specifically. The artists, like Prince and the other creatives, are culture makers. And as an artist and creative type myself my whole life and a business person, I know what it's like to be taken advantage of. There's always somebody in the industry that's out there that can take advantage of somebody. Industry people, other artists, relatives, friends, people who claim they found something, people who claim that something was left behind, people who claim something was given to them or what have you. But what did you do with it? Why did you want it in the first place? So sometimes people are making ways for their materials to end up in the hands of people who they have no association with so that they can receive some gain for something that they need or would find interest in, rather than be exploited by those that are closest to you. All of us are vulnerable to unforeseen incidents, and it might not be anything associated with death, but things just kind of come up. And we're supposed to prepare ourselves in a manner so that we can account for ourselves. But when we're in a society that has become accustomed to invasions of privacy and people wanting to intrude to a level where you don't have the sanctity of your person and your possessions, we are all being violated. If you're just going to be put into a situation where you obtain material items or whatever the possessions are that you know are of value in your life, and people are setting you up to run you into a tragedy, to depossess you and take your stuff so that they can use it for personal gain, something is fundamentally wrong. And so when there's trouble in the U.S. Copyright Office and the Office of Patents and Trademark, where they don't have enough people and qualified personnel to really handle the amount of cases there are, because it takes specific kinds of people to know what intellectual property really is and understand a real creation in the first place, it becomes more difficult. And when people are destroying things the way that we see things being destroyed right now, the origin of certain things can be lost through destruction. You can lose track of who really created something, who really designed it. A lot of people have preyed upon me for things to write songs, write music, come up with creative concepts, architecture, television commercials, and other forms of creative use of art. It's a pirate genre. And if you don't have some kind of way to protect yourself, and if you don't have a way to innovate and utilize some of it where you can take it to the market first, you're probably going to be exploited. A lot of people live and survive off of what creatives make possible, people like Prince. And somebody can take something that they stole and build a story around it and make it seem like you had a relationship with them, or that you knew something about them, or that they knew something about you that was never true. For example, when I was in high school, I was standing in a hallway, and one of my friends was pranking around and fooling around, and he ran up behind me and hugged me from behind, and I was eating this burger or something. And they snapped the picture right then. Well, he was just fooling around. There was absolutely nothing associated with intimacy or personal closeness like that at all. But it looked like it could be if you only saw the picture. Well, somebody with that picture can make it seem like, well, maybe you were gay, or maybe you were this, or maybe you were that, or that you had some relationship or some secret life, and they can scandalize your name and reputation based upon something that never actually happened, just because they have something with you in it. I've been careful about who I take pictures with and how I take pictures, both for still photography and motion photography, over the course of my life, because I learned very early on what people can do. A woman can say she slept with you. A woman can say you raped her. And here's the proof. Here's the picture that we knew one another. Anything. Or if they can find something in your possessions that seems like you had a relationship with somebody. For example, some woman might throw the best pair of panties that a man has ever seen on stage, and he just kept it as some type of treasure to talk about concert life for whatever reason. Or it could have just been a personal acquaintance that left her stuff with him. Or it could have been his girlfriend's or his wife's stuff or whatever. Well, somebody who gets possession of that can use that to build a story around it. My relatives stole a lot of my art, my paintings, my sculptures, my personal writing, my music, my books, and all kinds of things, my clothes, my bags, and other unique, unusual things. And another thing that people have to consider is that when you take a picture, whatever is in that picture becomes valuable. And so if somebody hangs on to what they saw you with in a picture depiction or background, that becomes valuable because it's with you in the picture, and because it can validate that you were there and that it's real, and it becomes a treasure. And so my question for my relatives was like, look, you didn't support me, you didn't believe in me, all you ever tried to do was tear me down. If you wanted something, you could have talked to me about it and I could have given you something nice. Why did you take that from me? Well, who knows what their motivations are? Most people who take something without permission that they intend to tell a story about or get gain from are taking advantage of somebody, or they wouldn't have taken it. They could have walked up and said, well, can I tell a story about you? No, they didn't want to get caught. They didn't want to have anybody to answer to. People can tell people things about the meanings of your work and your life that might not be true. They can draw their own conclusions. They can fill their own blanks about your intentions. If you're not hearing from the real person, you really don't know. It's all a scandal. Vincent van Gogh was just in a situation, the artist, that is most celebrated for the psychiatric aspect of what art is supposed to be for mental health, was just in the news because there were all of these stories about what happened to him when he went crazy over some woman and he cut a portion of his ear off and he gave it to her, and all of this morbid stuff to try to make it seem like people that are artists are supposed to go in deep to the point where if they don't get the love that they were seeking, it will turn you into some type of psychedelic person, some type of schizophrenic, bipolar person that's unstable in their psychology, and just all this stuff that people say. People came forward saying all kinds of stuff about Prince that they were not saying until suddenly he was dead. It could be somebody that hated him. It could be somebody that wanted something from him and he said no. It could be somebody that just wasn't good enough for what he was doing and he didn't include him. It could be somebody that was cut from the band. It could be anything. It could just be a thrill seeker. And so we have to be careful about what we believe when people are trying to seek out the value of people's personal estate. Some people are extraordinary people naturally. Prince was one of those people that I believe came here a little bit more close to God than other people. Some people come here a little bit more close to the God Center than others. And he was certainly one of those people. And no matter whether he would have been public about it or private, something about people like that has value and it intrigues other people. And even if they don't admit it, even if they pretend otherwise, something about people like that is fascinating. And a lot of people get taken advantage of. And so I wanted to talk about estates a little bit so that you have some idea of what people that do well are faced with, but to also share with you some of my personal trials and tribulations about trying to figure out how to secure my own life and work, and some of the people that were close to me that were supposed to protect me and how they tried to instead take advantage of me. If people didn't help and they weren't trying to support you, why do they come forward trying to act like they know so much about you? Because either they're trying to harm you or because they're trying to take advantage of you. And really, art was not created for harm. Art was created to be for our betterment. Prince was able to take all of us somewhere else for a little while in a way where we didn't know what it was for sure, but we knew for sure we liked it. And so God bless you. And I hope that you take inventory on your own life and better understand when you're taking advantage of somebody else. Most people that take advantage of other people know they're taking advantage of other people. The local press, the legal system, the political system, and the law enforcement system, combined with the religious system, collectively invaded some people's lives and took advantage of some people involuntarily in this market with intention to sell those stories for personal gain, for publishing in movies, in books, in all kinds of other levels that they had no permission whatsoever to assume. Some people are very clever about knowing that if they own your possessions, in some ways they own your life because your possessions define who you are. Your possessions can tell people something about you that your physical self can't in terms of your interests and what have you. And some of that media that they take is electronic. If you're into some unusual things electronically, they'll try to collect that. Hey, here's what this person did in their private time. These were their interests. This is what he liked for sex. This is what she liked when she watched their porn, or whatever it is that they can find. Here's something that nobody knew about. We don't know what this picture was, but it was found in this possession. They can do all kinds of stuff to take advantage of you. And they can network that electronic exploitation and have a whole entire national and international investment in somebody's life without permission. Because exhibits, concerts, and venues are things that travel from location to location to location. So multiple areas, multiple clusters of people, multiple venues and concerts and shows are invested in different places in something that they think can turn around an economic differential, and sometimes they make those investments without permission. because there are certain things that you can circulate, tour, and exploit whether the person is dead or whether they are alive. We are in the age of cyber citizens, where you don't even have to be alive for people to take gain and possession of you and your life to get something for it for personal gain. And I hope this gives you all some insight. Some people end up in the position that they're in because people were taking advantage of them. Not because they did anything wrong, not because something was bad in their life, not because they had any abnormal behaviors. People are forced and subjected into certain positions to help those who intend to exploit their life be able to take advantage of them by overwhelming them. It's a form of collective bullying. It's a form of collective theft. And so we will all learn a lot in seeing what happens as Prince's life and his estate comes to a close and evolves. It's in the courts. They're trying to determine first who is legitimate and who is not legitimate as an heir. And once they determine who's a legitimate heir, they can start to determine what the disbursement of his possessions were. I still have a hard time believing that there's not something somewhere that would state some of his intentions, at least for what he would wish to happen with his materials. And really, the people that are your friends and your relatives are supposed to know you well enough to know what you would have wanted. We saw Jesus Christ and Martin Luther King be exploited more than any two people in human history for other people's gain, circulating materials about them at a level that so many people profited and gained from beyond their life that it's impossible to count it. We have to be careful about how we exploit people. A lot of people that are in the industry that are doing well can't really trust anybody, and they can't really rest because people are willing to take your life from you in order to be able to obtain gain from what they think they can get from something you do or what you have. And if they can get rid of you, or if they can hurt you or cause you to be in a position where you can't take care of it yourself, they get to make the decisions that they want to make at your expense. And so this is all very, very serious. And I wanted to make sure that I acknowledge what creatives and people that are in the entertainment business that generates trillions of dollars for the world each year are faced with all the time. And it's even worse when the industry insiders, who themselves know what they too could lose, are the ones that are at the forefront of taking advantage of other people's lives and stealing their intellectual property and exploiting them. Some people will even kill somebody and then take some of what they gain from a murder and sow the seed to make it seem like they're doing something on behalf of you as a foundation or something to offset what they did to get you out of the way so they could have control. It's a very, very difficult and dangerous industry, even as there are some things that can show you the world and show you your dreams in a way that nothing else can. And so when people are trying to be paid for what they contribute to popular culture, that's why. Because you're making the same kind of cultural investment of yourself and the sacrifice of your life for the people that will engage with what you do. And those rare people come along that give us something that no other figure in human history will be able to do. And Prince did that just for us. How can somebody be at fault for being taken advantage of by people who had no permission to be taken advantage of anybody in the first place? Issues surrounding estates have divided and broken a lot of families. The consequence and the drawback can come sometime from the conflicts that can come as a result of doing well and having other people that are dependent upon you for their survival, or who stand to gain something because of what you've accomplished. We saw the case of Bernie Madoff and how it affected so many people and so many lives, and how it actually destroyed his own family. I mean, just ruined it. And I always think about them because I wonder how his wife was affected and how she feels about her choices, having known about her husband. And I think about him because I wonder what it's like to sit in a place amongst the lowest people in society after having gone that high. And I think about his sons, at least one of whom I believe committed suicide, and there were just issues that just destroyed their family. And some people say it was in the name of greed, and some people say it was in the name of scandal, and some people say it was just a Ponzi gone bad, and some people say this and some people say that. But ultimately, it was about people managing people's finances, their estates, their assets, their wills, their investments, etc. And a lot of families have been divided. And that's an extreme when you're talking about the wealth level, but a lot of families that are at different standards of economics are equally stressed and strained. Some people have even killed their own kin, their parents, their brothers, their wives, their children, or what have you. Some people hunt for life insurance. Some people hunt for auto insurance. Some people hunt for other types of material insurance. Some people hunt for banking insurance. And there are just so many dimensions of things that people do to survive. And some people believe that they didn't have a choice but to harm somebody for their own survival because of whatever it is they believe they're in. Or some people become so cold they don't really care who they have to harm as long as they get what they're trying to get. But this stuff is very serious. And if you haven't taken the time to inventory your life and your plans and know what you have and what have you, you're a very, very vulnerable person. And I've seen this happen time and time again where a lot of people have been taken advantage of. Some people have been taken advantage of who totally did everything they were supposed to protect their assets, and it was their attorney who screwed them over. And so this stuff is very, very serious, and it should be taken very, very serious. You can end up being underprotective, and you can end up being overprotective. And really, we were all supposed to be working on the principles that would protect and defend all of us. But we've become a culture of pirates. We've been doing things that involve scams and scandals and theft so frequently and so often at so many levels. People have accepted it as a practice, and now it's out of control. And it's hard to find out what's supposed to be what. In some kind of way, coming from the lowest socioeconomic status, I had instilled in me basic principles to account for myself. Because if I had not, take my word for it, we wouldn't be here to provide this information, because I come from the most vulnerable position. And a lot of the people that get exploited the most, no matter what level of stardom or success they achieve, can be exploited. Because gifted people have something about them that people can see very early on. And there are all kinds of factors and behaviors that people engage in to try to regulate, control, or even take somebody else's assets from them. There are a lot of assets that people don't even know they have. Somebody can have something set aside for you. Somebody could have left something for you. There are retirement packages and companies and all kinds of stuff that people might not even be aware of. Some people put their finances and their estates into trust instead of just wills, so that exactly what that person is supposed to get is there, and that's what they get to claim, and there's a name on it. And there are so many dimensions and ways of dealing with how people's possessions are supposed to be dispersed. And it's frightening when I think about the fact that I come from a family that's poor, because poor people will hurt one another. Some poor people, let me say it that way instead. Some people will hurt one another to have what they would not otherwise have. They'll hurt somebody that they love. And my family is decadent like that. And so are a lot of people that come from low education and what have you. If you don't have a stable family structure, it can be very, very difficult to achieve success if you don't have some people who embrace you because they love you and treat you like family or a really good friend. And a lot of the relationships, friendships, and what have you have been betrayed because of economics, because of things that become too personal, things that include sex, and all kinds of stuff that really should have no place mixed in business. But it can be that way. The people that can hurt somebody the most are the people that are closest to them, the people that know them. You get all these people that show up out of nowhere who love you for not even giving them a reason to love you if they think you have something that they can get, or that being associated with you means it gives them status. But when they think that you don't have anything that's worth anything in the first place, they're trying to stay as far away from you as they can. They're trying to marginalize you. You're a source of entertainment, something to talk down about, something to laugh at, or what have you. And I think that's really, really interesting, because I see for certain what it means to have millions of people that don't really care about certain people at all. They'll drive past them and leave them for dead. But if that person achieves something they think they can get something from, you can hardly beat them off of you. You can't even keep them away. And I looked at my own race of people as relates to what these estates and wills and assets mean, the things that give certain cultures their economic value. And I asked, how do people handle that? And most of them don't care. They don't take care of one another. And if you haven't taken care of one another, what right do you have to show up believing that you have some entitlement to something in the wake of someone's death, or circumstances that lead them to have to part ways with their resources? And so I started working on some positioning, because whatever you're doing, you got to ask yourself ultimately, what is this for? Who is this for? I found out that when you don't have anything, people don't want you. When they don't think they can get something from you materially that they can exploit and manipulate and use, they might not want you. But when you have stuff, even the people that don't want you, because they don't really want you as a person. They want what you have. And so that's why you see a lot of people at certain economic statuses, MIA. You don't really see them in public at all, because they know what they have to lose. They know what's at stake. They know where their segment of society is, and they know where their security is. This whole free-for-all, everybody utopia thing, it's not really reality. And sometimes we can invite things into our lives that are just not good for us. And sometimes we make the foolish mistake of leaving things out of our lives that we need it most, because we have these perceptions we have in our minds about what we believe to be value. But most of it is just pop culture, trends, and bandwagon effect, where everybody's just doing whatever everybody else is doing. They don't really know. There's no substance or depth to it. And then there's this other segment that stays in their socioeconomic status or social status because of what they do to oppress other people to keep that class status separated. And all of that stuff plays into what material assets mean. You don't know if there were any collaborative investments. You don't know if there were any third-party investments that are unmentioned. There's all this stuff that can come into play. But there's a risk making a will too prematurely, because people will try to harm you for it. When a musician dies early, the mystique around who they were when they were living and the things that they created, and then the sudden shock of the loss from death, can make their assets and their value skyrocket. And some people will try to kill an artist just for that purpose. And some people spend years of their lives envious, jealous, to the point where they'll harm somebody. I mean, all of this stuff is going on. The singer, the Latina singer, Selena, she was killed by an assistant of her and her father. Some type of dispute happened where jealousy, rage, and disagreement led to her being murdered. And this is a person that had done so little, but at the same time had done so much so fast in her career that when you think about what her value would have been out in the future if the little she had already done, which was still a lot, made such a cultural impact, we lost a treasure. The whole world did. And people didn't realize that kind of thing can happen, and that something shocking like a woman being involved with murdering another woman could be the cause for it. I mean, this stuff is real. Look at what happened to Gianni Versace. Who thinks that you're just out on a walk or a jog and some random person comes up and brutally murders you because of rage, obsession, or whatever it is, stalking, rejection? This stuff is real. And when you do the legal part of it, you're just trying to take care of what needs to happen for protection for those unforeseen issues that could put your asset and your life in danger. And that's what it's really all about. I hope that you enjoyed the program. And I hope that you have some insight and some enlightenment on why this information is so important. And perhaps it'll give everybody a better understanding of what's at stake, so that you can see that there are people that are out there that contribute to harm, and some people contribute to their own harm. But that this is a serious thing, and that some artists get out of control and some don't. But the bottom line is still the same when it comes to making sure that the value of their contribution to society and culture is protected. This is The Music Line. I'm your host, Reggie Radney, and I've got information for you.